He used to have a good job, a caring wife, and 3 lovely kids. But in December 2001, everything changed forever. He brutally murdered his whole family in cold blood. The truth was finally out. His so-called perfect life was just a huge lie. His wife and kids were found dead, floating in the water off the Oregon coast, leaving behind a haunting question. Why did he do it? This is the story of lies and deceit from the person who was supposed to keep the family safe, Christian Longo. Christian Michael Longo grew up in Ypsilanti Township, Michigan. The couple had some struggles with money, but despite the rocky start, they went on to have 3 children, Zachary, Sadie, and Madison. The Longo family was like any other mid-class family. Mary Jane had devoted herself to being a full-time mother and an active member of the Jehovah's Witness Church. Meanwhile, Christian seemed like the perfect family man, with his youthful charm, well-spoken manner, and religious background. At first glance, the Longo family's life seemed flawless. Little did anyone know that everything about this family was a huge lie. In 2001, Christmas was just around the corner when everything changed for this family forever. On December 19th, 2001, the tragic events unfolded as the lifeless body of 4-year-old Zachary Longo was discovered in Lint Slough.
By morning, divers were in the water. K2 was first on the scene as they began their search for bodies, a focused search around nearby boat docks.
Drivers later found 3-year-old Sadie's body on December 22nd, less than a mile offshore in the Pacific Ocean.
Last Saturday, divers found the body of 3-year-old Sadie Ann Longo in the Alsea Bay. Days earlier, her brother Zachary had washed ashore. Since then, police boats have searched the Alsea River for clues to their murders.
The search continued, and 5 days later, 34-year-old Mary Jane's nude body was found stuffed in suitcases near a ramp at Embarcadero Marina on December 27, 2001. 2-year-old Madison was found inside a different suitcase, dropped off at the same dock on the same day. Autopsies revealed that Sadie and Zachary were killed by asphyxiation, while Mary Jane and Madison had been strangled. The entire Longo family was tragically gone, except for one. But where was Christian? He was nowhere to be found. Suspicion immediately fell on Christian as the police worked to determine his whereabouts. The FBI added him to their 10 most wanted list, and soon enough, he faced charges of 4 counts of aggravated murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution.
We are still processing scenes, we are still looking at evidence, and of course, with the FBI's help, we are looking for Mr. Longo.
Now, here started to unveil. The investigators dug up the Longo family's history, especially Christian's, and found some unsettling details.
We were told that not to be alarmed, but that somebody had been staying here and they suspected him of killing his wife and 2 kids.
The investigation revealed that Longo had a history of criminal behavior. He had extravagant spending habits, which often caused problems in the family. After leaving the New York Times distribution company, he tried to start his own business, which turned into a financial disaster. To cope with mounting debt, Longo resorted to making counterfeit checks from clients' checks.
We had our employee Christmas party Tuesday evening, and everything was just like normal.
Longo had been deeply involved in financial scams for an extended period. His schemes included taking out loans using other people's names, accumulating debt, and using false IDs to evade creditors. Surprisingly, Mary Jane remained oblivious to her husband's deceitful activities, unaware of the true extent of his wrongdoing. While the family struggled financially, Christian lived a lavish lifestyle, splurging on fancy cars and luxurious vacations. But Christian's charade crumbled when he was eventually caught and charged with fraud. His carefree existence came to an abrupt end as he faced probation and the obligation to compensate his victims. The worst part? The image of Christian as a seemingly perfect and caring husband was also a lie. He cheated on his wife, leading to the Jehovah's Witnesses discovering his actions and expelling him. This made the family move from Michigan to Ohio. Upon arriving in Ohio, Christian gave the impression of wanting to turn over a new leaf, but in reality, he was just evading creditors. He continued his criminal activities, such as cashing forged checks. However, his actions caught the attention of local police, compelling Christian to move with his family once again, this time to Oregon. On the day Mary Jane and Madison's bodies were discovered, Christian Longo had fled on a plane to Cancun, Mexico.
My name is Michael Finkel. I was a writer for the New York Times Magazine. I learned that while Christian Longo was in Mexico, he was pretending to be a writer for the New York Times. In fact, he was pretending to be me.
Not only did Christian get a room at a resort using a stolen credit card and assume the identity of writer Michael Finkel, but he also skillfully deceived the entire resort community. During his time there, he enjoyed the beach, indulged in drinks, frequented nightclubs, and even engaged in a romantic relationship with a German tourist. After being identified by an American tourist, Mexican officials deported him back to the United States.
A man who first introduced himself as Brad. Well, the next time she saw him, he told her his name was Mike. She had some suspicions, as you might imagine. The man she met was actually Christopher Longo, changing names.
He was finally caught.
Arrived at Bush Intercontinental Airport this morning, accompanied by FBI agents. Longo was arrested by Mexican authorities and the FBI last night at a beach resort in Mexico.
The case was indeed highly complex, with the prosecution and defense painting different stories. But before we move ahead, make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay in touch with the latest developments in similar cases. According to the investigations, Christian Longo's life was a tale of ambition turned sour. He harbored dreams of success, but faced a grim reality of failure, betrayal, and petty crime. He even bargained for his wife's wedding ring for gas money at one point.
I think internally I was probably thinking more about, what am I going to say to people now that our Ford Taurus has been taken? They're suddenly not going to see this car driving around.
The trial also unveiled Longo's version of events leading to the deaths of his wife and children. He said that after a date on December 15th, Mary Jane confronted him about suspected lies. The next day was full of guilt and struggle. Feeling pressure due to unpaid rent, Longo shared that after struggling to sleep, he confided in Mary Jane when she asked what was wrong. Throughout an all-night conversation, he revealed troubling truths, including that the family van was stolen and filled with stolen gas, and their condo rent was unpaid. According to him, Mary Jane became extremely upset, slapping him and saying she could never trust him again. On the morning of December 17th, he asked Mary Jane if he could stay home from work, offering to take care of the children. However, she insisted he go to work and eventually dropped him off, dressed only in a bathrobe. When they reached home, Mary Jane hesitated and needed help inside, where she slumped on the floor. Longo claimed to find Madison's lifeless body on the bed. He said that during an emotional conversation, Mary Jane accused him of the deaths, mentioning the other two children were in the water. Losing control, Longo admitted to strangling Mary Jane. To dispose of the bodies, he put them in suitcases and threw them into the water. But prosecutors debunked Longo's account, pointing out Mary Jane's lack of a violent history. They also challenged the idea of her being able to dump the children in the water with heavy rocks attached, given her 110-pound stature.
He placed his hand on her throat and he began to squeeze. And in a violent struggle, she fought for her life. But she wasn't able to overcome the defendant.
According to the prosecution, it was all a lie. Investigators had looked into Longo's computer and discovered details from a website called Hitman Online, offering advice on committing murder.
In a matter of 3 or 4 minutes, she was dead.
The state didn't say how Longo may have killed his children, other than to say they were suffocated.
Additionally, there were obituaries with personal information suggesting Longo was planning to change his identity. Prosecutors argued that Longo's own statements further incriminated him because when he was questioned, his statement was, "I sent them to a better place."
This isn't someone receiving a sentence unjustly that may be innocent. This is someone that deserves to die for what they've done. If anyone deserves to die for their crime, it is Chris.
The prosecution believed that because his lies were getting exposed, he felt trapped and decided to end everything. Christian was tired of dealing with family responsibilities and just wanted to keep spending money without any worries holding him back. Do you agree? In 2003, Longo received a death sentence. He spent several years on death row at the Oregon State Penitentiary until a state moratorium on executions was imposed in 2011.
Baker Duby got a phone call she wasn't expecting yesterday morning. An Oregon State employee called with, quote, bad news. The man who killed her sister and their 3 young children would be removed from death row.
Currently, Christian Longo continues to be held at the Oregon State Penitentiary. Should Christian have remained on death row in Oregon? What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments. I will see you in the next video.